Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well today. I'm just going to wait for a few people to pop on and then I will get started. In case you're new to my channel, my name is Rachel from Rachthestamper.com and I make cards. Paper crafts, cards, boxes, 3D projects, all kinds of fun stuff. So I thought today we could go back, and I did try to find my card, but either I've given it away or I put it somewhere that I don't know where it is. So what we're going to do is we could do one of two things. And the other thing, what I will do is, hey Stephanie, the other thing I'll do is I will save one of these for maybe Wednesday. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do, and then you can pick which stamp set. So I've been seeing so many posts about Australia. It's so devastating. Hey Karen. And so I got out two stamp sets we can use. We can either use Animal Outing and we could use the kangaroo because I did do the rhino before. Or we could even do the Gang's-all Mirror and do the meerkats. And I saw a really cool technique which has kind of been floating around lately, so maybe you've seen it already, but it's new to me and I'm kind of mind-boggled of why I never thought of it before because it's such a cool idea. So if I don't get to do that today, I will maybe do that on Wednesday on Facebook. But basically the whole gist of the technique is what you do is you fill in the whatever it is you stamped. So we could do it with the kangaroo, or we could do it with the meerkats, and then you fill it in with black embossing powder and it looks like a shadow silhouette. Really cool. I've seen several really neat cards with it. But what I was working on is I was going to share with you all today, which we could do this as a reflection for one. So we could do the meerkats as a reflection and do the other one another day. But I was just thinking of Australia. That's what I was thinking of, either kangaroo. I'm 90% sure they have meerkats in Australia as well, but we could either do the kangaroo or the meerkats. But I wanted to show you all, again, how to do the reflection technique. It is very simple. It's much simpler if you have a stamping device. So I have my Stamparatus out, and I always, when I do it, I always do a test one because for some reason, it's like every time I do it, I make it more complicated than it is. So I always do a test to remember how to do it. And it is a quite simple technique. Now, I did see somebody say meerkats, so we can absolutely do the meerkats. And I'm going to do them as a reflection. So we will kind of create the background, do the reflection, and then we'll go from there. So in order to be able to do that, we are going to have to do a little bit of masking. So I have masking paper. I do have Post-it tape, which works great. However, not thinking about the meerkats. I'm actually going to get out my masking paper. Oh, sorry. Didn't think to have that out. Oh, goodness, it's in here somewhere. I might have moved it. Bear with me 1 second. Let's see. There it is. So I got this quite some time ago, and it comes in full, if you can see, 8.5 by 11 sheets. This is from Simon Says Stamp. I've had it for a long time because I've only ever used, this will be still my one sheet. So good morning from Everett. Thanks for joining, Cindy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stamp the meerkats, and then I will just trim it. Sorry, I'm going to turn that down a little bit. I want to try to watch my comments, but for some reason, sometimes on YouTube they come out weird. So I got to find myself on YouTube. Let's see if I can find myself. Reach. Because I like to be able to follow. There it is. I was going to say, I like to be able to follow along with what you say. Ooh, look at that. It's making me watch a commercial. So I'm going to stamp it on here, and then we'll go ahead and go through with the reflection technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip you down. So if you get a little seasick, just turn for a second, and I will tell you when to look. Just bear with me 1 sec. Just have to get this out of the holder. Oops. Sorry. Wrong way. Sorry about that. All right, let me just straighten this out a little bit. I think, so the Rainbow Stamper made me a birthday card the other day, and I think he must have hit his head or been fooling around with my camera mount, because now that I look at it, it's not, there we go. I was going to say it's not exactly straight. Okay, so let me move this out of the way. All right, so to get started, what I'm going to do, and this doesn't have to be like a super fantastic inking, you just kind of need something that you can trim. So I'm going to take the meerkats and just put them on a block, and just with some Memento ink. Again, it doesn't really need to be like a great inking, so if you miss some of it, that's no problem. And I'm going to try to turn it so I don't have as much to trim on the bottom. But it doesn't need to be like a great inking, it just needs to be an inking. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. And this is probably, if you want to do this, and again, you can kind of do this, so don't think of it for whatever technique you're doing. Probably should have done this ahead of time. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to cut quickly. Whatever technique you're doing, you only need to do this masking portion if you're going to do something in the background, like a sunrise or a sunset, something to that effect. It doesn't really need to be done if you're doing a regular card. And also, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim closely. I already have one of these for the kangaroo, so if we decide to go back and do that one, we're good. But I'm going to trim kind of closely so you can kind of almost go to the line. You don't really have to cut on the outside of the line. You can almost cut away, because sometimes when you're doing masking, you do want it to be super close, because what it tends to do is it gives you a better shadow line so you don't end up with that white halo around. So there's one. So when you cut, make sure that you trim when you're deciding to do masking. If you do masking paper, you cut very close. And I'm obviously not going to cut all the way in on some of these. But it's kind of funny when I think about it, when I say I didn't realize you guys would want to do the meerkats, but they're so daggone cute. I should have known you would want to do the meerkats. Okay, so we did stamping class we had on Friday. We made some really cute cards, so I will share one of those this week with you. I do have some extra kits left over, so they'll be really easy to do. And if you haven't seen the technique that I'm talking about, with basically you're heat embossing your entire image, and then what you do is you're going to go in with Versamark and kind of wet the center of the image, and then you're going to add embossing powder to it and heat it, and it looks like a silhouette. And I just think to myself, why in God's great green earth did I not think of that idea sooner? It's such a simple idea and a really cool idea that I've seen people share. And sometimes those kind of ideas, when you think to yourself, like, why did I not think of that sooner? All right, hang in there. Almost done. If I had this pre-recorded, I would have tried to cut out the fussy cutting, but that's what happens when you're live and thinking of ideas. So I'm going to go across these feet as best I can. I'm not going to go all the way up. We can always kind of fix this. But the good part is, too, if you are able to get your hands on this masking paper, which I said, Simon Says Stamp carries it. I'm sure you can probably get it on Amazon as well. But you can keep your masks and use them over again, because I will show you. So there, that's not too bad. I'm just going to get just a little bit of this up in here. Some of them you kind of can't tell when you're cutting whether or not it is the ground or like the bottom of their butt. So that's one kind of funny part with this. Which I guess thinking about it, probably you want to cut some of that out. Okay, so here's our meerkats. I have those there. I am going to keep the stamp handy. So again, I've done a lot of masking, and I really have only used one sheet. So it definitely lasts a long time. So I have those there. The other ones, what I do, and I have the rhinos, not the kangaroo. But what I do is I have my masks just stuck to the inside here. So you can just use them over and over again, because it does stay sticky for pretty long. So that is pretty nice. The only other thing you're going to need, and I'm going to show you this ahead of time, just because it's a little bit simpler. You're going to need a clear stamp. Now, this stamp that I have is it's called a background clear photopolymer stamp. So if you want to get one of these, this one I've gotten from Neat and Tangled, but you could also just use the back side if you have a large smooth photopolymer stamp. So if you have a big stamp, and I cannot think of any right now, you can just use, so this side would be the stamp side, you can use the opposite side. I have seen some people also use the silicone matte. I will say, however, I have not had good luck with the matte being as distinctly clear when I use it versus using a clear stamp. But again, you don't have to go out and buy this necessarily. What you could do is you could get a photopolymer stamp. I don't think any of these that I have are photopolymer. No, you could get a photopolymer stamp and then just use the back side of it. So very simple. So masking paper is basically a paper that has a sticky side to it. So I'll peel this apart for you. So it's got a release paper on it. And essentially what you're going to do is use it to cover up. So it'll make more sense once we get started. The other thing you're going to need, and I'm just going to use this one in here, is a piece of acetate. And I just use the piece from the cardstock. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't necessarily have to order acetate. Just use a scrap piece that you have. It just makes it a little easier to load stuff in and out. So what we're going to do first is we're going to decide how we're going to make this card. So most likely, since the meerkats are a wider stamp, we're going to make our card in the landscape orientation. Okay, so with your Stamparatus, what you're going to do is you're going to pick typically where you want to lay it. I usually like to go to a corner or a line. That way I can find exactly where I am and pick it up. That is the best for me. You might find it a little bit different. Maybe you like to stamp at the bottom. Maybe you like to stamp on the inside. But as long as you are at a corner where you know every time you're making your card, you're like, okay, I'm lining it up at the 6-inch mark. I think that is the best way. It doesn't matter which inch it is, but I'm going to go at 5 for now. And I have this lined up in the corner. And I just want to make sure that I'm going to have enough room with my meerkat. So bear with me just one second. I'm going to wipe them off before I put them down. I'll make sure they're nice and clean. That way I don't have any smudges on my paper. So what you need to do is kind of set your stamp and think, okay, so if I have my meerkats here somewhat near to the top, right? So that's about what they're going to look like. If you flip this over, are you going to have enough room for the rest of them to be there? So you kind of probably are going to have to go up just a teeny bit. So say if we're going to go here, so the top of his head is at the bottom, we're going to just flip him right over. So just kind of estimate where you want it. And then once again, I'm just going to make sure I'm centered. So I'm going to close my lid, pick up my stamp, and now I'm going to ink this with Memento ink. So this is the time where you're going to make it. You want it to be nice and black. Remember, when you have this fixed this way, you can always re-ink it. So make sure when you're done that you get a nice inking and that you like the way it looks at all the people's, all their hair. So you can see I missed his little part on his head. So for some reason it's not dark enough. I could always go back. I could add more ink and do it again, but I'm very happy with how that is. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off my stamp. Okay. So now this is the part, and I say it becomes complicated, but it's really not. It's fairly simple. So now you're going to need your background stamp. Okay. I'm just sitting that there so I have it there. Also, you're going to need your photopolymer mat underneath. And the reason you're going to need this is because we're stamping photopolymer onto the paper. So we're going to end up sliding this back in. So for now, what we're going to do, we're going to peel our sticker off. We're going to grab our piece. What did I do with my little piece of acetate? It has disappeared. Here it is. So I'm going to take my acetate. And the only reason I like to use acetate is because it makes it a little easier to slide this in and out versus it getting stuck on your stamp. So I'm going to just move my magnet for a moment. So again, I have my stamp lined up in the place where I want it. So I'm just sitting the acetate on top. So the acetate is on top of your cardstock. It does help if it's square, but as long as it's in the position, you're good. And then you're going to sit your stamp upside down where your image would be. Okay, so kind of estimate. You don't want a big gap. You can move it down so there's a little gap if you want to do some ground to water, if you want a big amount of ground. But sometimes I will say it is a little bit hard if you have a very large amount of ground. So just trying to, it's kind of hard to see because of the camera. So I apologize if my hand is in the way. So I'm just going to set that down. So now it's on the acetate where I want it lined up. Again, I'm making sure that this piece is lined up at the 5. This piece is all the way up to the edge. Okay, now the only other thing is you got to lay your clear stamp. So again, if you're using a stamp that has a design, you're just going to flip over and use the back of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it sideways and I'm just going to set it on top, just like that. So I'm going to close my lid. That way I'm going to pick up the photopolymer stamp is on the lid. Okay. Again, just making sure that everything is lined up the way it's supposed to be. And now I tend to like to do this with a light gray. I've done it once before in black and it's almost a little too dark. So I'm going to go with gray granite. Just lightly stamp your meerkats. Then you're going to close the lid and press down to pick up the meerkats. If you feel like you want it to be a little darker, you're going to just open it again, ink them up a little bit, and just press one more time. Okay, let me just close this just so I don't drop it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my lid, take out my meerkat stamp. I'm going to put this foam pad underneath just so I make sure it's a little bit cushier. I'm just making sure my paper is lined up to the 5, and then I'm closing this. And you know what? I just realized it is a tiny bit crooked because I must have a crooked paper. Let's see. Just a little bit over. The nice part about this, though, is that you can move it. I must have moved my... I promise you this, it is not this hard if you're not doing it on a video in front of people. I think my paper must have just slipped. So now I'm going to close this. So after making sure that I had it lined up correctly, I don't think this piece of acetate is straight, so I probably should have cut one or used the opposite end of it. So you do want to make sure your corner is straight because mine wasn't. And then, so what I've done is I pressed the reverse image, and then I'm going to just peel this off. It does tend to stick because it is a large, but you can see there. So now you have a shadow reflection image, okay? So, no, that was a little bit of stepping to get there, but if you do make sure that your, I'll show you one more time. If you do make sure that your image is straight and your acetate piece is straight, you shouldn't have that problem. So I'm just going to show you one more time. We will do the meerkats, but I'm going to show you one more time. I'm going to do the kangaroo instead. Just so you can see what I mean. Okay. Move these guys out of the way. Like, it's just a little bit off. I'm going to go with this side. This side's much straighter. Okay, so we're going to just start the whole process again. I'm going to show you the entire thing one more time. And so I did that with the kangaroo, so I'll do it on this side. So once again, what you're going to do is you're going to put your cardstock, make sure you have it centered where you want it, and you're going to put your stamp on the top where you would want your stamp to be. You're going to close your lid, pick up your stamp. As you can see, I didn't clean that one off. It still has some ink on it. Ink up my kangaroo. This is probably, I'll say it's not time consuming, but just making sure you have it lined up precisely. This is probably the hardest part. Okay, so there he is all lined up. So now I'm going to take my clear acetate. I'm making sure I have the more square end this time so I don't have that problem again. Just going to set this here. I'm going to clean off my kangaroo. You're going to set him down here.
Kind of make sure he's lined up the way you want him. Okay. And then you can either do this one of two ways. You can kind of eyeball where you think that you want this to be, or you can set it right down on top of it so you make sure that you cover him completely. So you're going to pick that up. Once again, I'm going to go with gray granite. Okay, so again, I have my clear stamp on the, oh my goodness, I can't think what this is called. I have my clear stamp on my, what is this, a window? A door? We'll call it a door. Clear stamp on the door. I have my stamp that I want to stamp on the acetate. I'm going to ink it up with gray granite. Close the lid to pick up the image. Open it. You can see your image on here. I'm not sure how hard that is for you to see, but you can see the image of the kangaroo on there. So if you ever feel like you're not sure that you got something, you can always go back and re-ink it. Just press all over it again. You're going to move your acetate piece out, okay? And again, since it's a photopolymer stamp, you do want to add your mat back in. Just lining it back up. And then once again, just closing the window. And now one thing you do have to remember, even if you goof this up just the slightest bit, it is a reflection, and reflections aren't 100%. It's not like you're doing a mirror into a mirror image instead of a, like if they were looking at each other, that would be a little bit different. So I'm going to just close this, peel him off. And there you go. So there's your mirror image. So he's the top here. If you see, I got a smudge. And then you have your mirror image on the bottom. Okay. So you can make more than one card with this. You could do this over and over again. Once you have it set up, it's pretty easy to use if you wanted to make more than one. But then basically that's really all you're doing for the mirroring part. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just move my Stamparatus out of the way for now. For the rest of this, this is where we would get to be doing the masking. Okay. So with your meerkats, what you're going to do is you're going to just peel the backing paper off, just like so, and you're just going to sit it right on top. If this looks like a lot of work and you don't want to do this, there's another thing you can use. Let me grab it for you. This is actually called drawing gum, and this is a masking fluid. Okay, so what you would do with this is, now I have a couple tips for this if you were to do this instead. You actually paint this on with a brush, okay? You paint this on. If you want to save your brush, the best thing you want to do, let's see if I can get this open. Haven't used it in a while. You obviously want to shake it very much. You don't need very much. You're just going to put a little bit. And what you do is you're going to coat your brush in a tiny bit of dish soap because it helps to make your brush clean off a little bit better. So you definitely don't want to use like your best, newest paintbrush if you do this. But what you would do is you dip in and you paint it on and it completely covers it. Now for this, you do have to wait for it to dry because it does take some time to dry. And then you can go ahead and color away. And then when you're done, you just take an eraser and you'll erase it off. So I can do that one day as well. That's another fun way to do it. The only thing you have to keep that in mind when we do that is you have to have drying time because you have to let the drawing gum completely dry before you do it. So we'll do that one day, and what I'll do is I will do a pre-piece that I've allowed to dry. I'm just going to peel the backing off of here. Oops. And then we can do that one as well. So I'm just going to kind of line this up the best that I can. Make sure they're, for the most part, covering. I didn't trim out the little hairs. I kind of left those be. So now you can see they're masked. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do some coloring over top. Let me move this over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go for, the last time I did it almost like an evening sky. So I'm going to try that. So I'm going to do balmy blue, a little bit of seaside spray, and then I think blueberry bushel. I don't really know if I'm going to use Night of Navy or if I'm going to use black instead. So we'll have to see. We're going to see which way it works better there. Let me just grab a couple of clean sponges that I know are clean, because these laying on the desk here are definitely not, and I don't want to end up with something green. Okay, so I'm going to go with my lightest color, but I'm going to start with Seaside Spray first because I feel like that one's going to be a little bit lighter. Now, if you don't like to ink directly off of your ink pad, another thing you can do is just get a block and dip some of your ink. You could also, at that time, where is it? Because this makes it sometimes a little bit easier as well. You could even take and add a little bit of glycerin because that helps it to spread a little bit better. Or you could just do regular old ink. So it's up to you. So I'm just going to swirl this around. So I'm going to have it be a little bit lighter, closer to them. Now, I'm not so much worried about these guys yet. Okay, so I'm going to try to just stay away with scrap paper. So I'm going to kind of just hold this part here for now, just so we have a little bit of a line, because it is going to eventually be a little bit blue, only because we are doing a water reflection. And even if these little dudes turn blue, it's going to be fine. Remember, we are going to have some little tiny spots that I didn't exactly mask in there, so I'm not super duper worried about that. All right, so that's Seaside Spray. Do a little bit of Balmy Blue. Just going to use a different side of my sponge. And kind of going out a little bit more to the edge. Little teeny piece pulling up, but that's okay. So there's that. I'm going to bring in some Blueberry Bushel. Again, I'm going to pick up a little bit darker side. So I'm going to kind of try and start off and go to the edge. And then same with this one, I'm going to start off here, but bring it in because I do want it to be a little bit darker. So same thing again, when I come down here at the bottom, I'm starting at the bottom. Oops, didn't hold that quite enough. I'm starting off the paper and coming on. And one other thing I'm going to do while I'm at it, because I don't think I've had a chance so far to use that gouache. So I'm going to do a little bit of a sprinkle in the sky with that, with the stars. So that's pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit of Night of Navy, and I may still go back and add a teeny bit of black. We'll just have to kind of see what it looks like. I think I got another side I can use here. So with the Night of Navy, I'm definitely going to try to stay a little bit more to the outside edge here. And the mat I'm working with underneath is the Easy Clean mat, so it's not really going to ruin it. You can wipe it off. It does take a teeny bit of staining, but and once again, I did do the meerkats in Memento, so I can actually color them in with the Stampin' Blends. So as you can see, you kind of have your nice line, and we're going to end up doing the water a little bit differently. I'm just going to wipe this off. Okay. So the water, what I'm going to try to do for the water is I'm going to try to make this considerably lighter. So I'm only probably going to use Seaside Spray. Maybe I'll add a little bit of Pool Party. But I want it to be much, much lighter. So I'm just going to flip this over. And remember, they're not going to be colored on the bottom because they are merely a reflection. So again, you have to kind of go with this, the fact of you got to use your imagination a little bit. So I'm going to do the Pool Party first, kind of in the center. You can also, you know, we have lots of stamps that have watermarks in them. So you could also, if you wanted to, add some like water lines. I believe the, oh my goodness, I can't think of the name of it now. The one that has the lily pads, I think, has one. All right, so there's a little bit of Pool Party. And I'm going to go back in and see if I can find the side. I think this was the Seaside Spray. Okay, so let's see. Maybe this one. Now I'm going to go down just a little so we have a little bit more of an edge. Now, one other thing you have to remember when you're doing this is, does your water have like a little bit of grass there that you're going to kind of draw in? Like a little bit of, not grass, but like seaweed? Or whatever it may be. All right, and I'm going to add in, I think I'm going to add just a little bit of blueberry bushel. Just a little. I'm going to try to be light-handed with this. I think this was the blueberry side. Because we kind of want it to reflect the colors that are above in the sky, but I just don't want it too dark that you lose the reflection. All right, so I think that's probably pretty good. There we go. All right, so now what I'm going to do, and this does make your fingers super duper inky, so if you've just had a French manicure, this probably isn't the card you want to be working on. Save this for maybe when you have dark fingernails, or you could wear gloves, one of the two. So what I'm going to do is, just to go to the edge a little bit, I'm going to pick Garden Green, and I'm going to kind of just go and make a little bit of like a, I don't even know what you would call this. I'm just kind of bouncing my brush to simulate maybe what a grass would look like on the edge. Pretty short, so if you can see that, it is pretty tiny. Just little teeny pieces. You could do this also with a blender pen if you want it to be a little bit softer. And what I probably will do is go in and add just a teeny bit of green sponging. I would say you could do it with a sponge dauber, but when you do sponge daubing, you do get a much harder line effect. So sponge daubing gives you a much more concentrated color. So you want to kind of be careful with that. So now I'm going to go in with, what would look nice? I think I'm going to do just a little Old Olive, just so it's a teeny bit lighter. And I'm going to take the very tippy tip of this sponge, just really, really gently. So I just have like just that little bit. And I'm just barely kind of blurring the line at the edge there. So you kind of get a little bit of grass reflection. And a little bit of grass on the top. Not a lot. Okay, so you can see there you have like that little bit of a grass glow. So hopefully that looks okay. So for the most part, I will say this is probably where we will come to an end with the sponging. You could certainly add something else. I just want to make this just a little bit softer down here. I'm just going to grab just a little bit of glycerin on this block and see if I can just smooth this out just a little bit, because it's a little bit brush strokey for me. And the glycerin really does make everything a lot smoother. So you can see I kind of had those splotchies there, and if you do use the glycerin, it really helps to smooth out the colors. So if you're not fantastic in your own opinion, because I think everybody's probably better at it than they think, glycerin is a really good way to help make things a little bit smoother. So we're going to be finished with that. So I'm going to pick up all these sponges and I'm going to put them in my little thing here so I can clean them off. I don't know which ones I use, but I'm just going to clean them all. Put this on the side. So even though these are all stained, these sponges, you can take them downstairs or take them to your sink, rinse them out. Make sure they run clear, and then once they dry, you can use them again with no problems whatsoever. All right, so again, let me just move all these little dudes out of the way. So we just pretty much kind of went through most of the blues and then a little bit of green. I'm going to add in just a little pear pizzazz kind of in between to just soften this a little bit. Kind of just using the side of the brush just so I get like the littlest tip. I don't really want a whole lot, but I feel like there's a little bit of too much white peeking through. Okay, so there's that. So now is the fun part, because this is the part where you get to see what it looks like underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel these meerkats off, and I'm just going to stick them in my meerkat container to keep them. And then if I do this again, I can use it because, again, it does stay sticky for some time. So I'm just going to use my little spatula here on my take your pick tool. Kind of lift up the edge. And you do want to be gentle because when the paper is wet, it does tend to stick a little bit. But there's one. So you can see there is a teeny little bit that I missed, but we can always go back and fix that. And then the rest of them are one big group, so they should come off a little bit easier. But I'll have to do another video. Oh, your paper sure comes today? I hope. Well, you know what? I have, I mailed them out. Did you get an email that it was coming today? Because they are coming by priority, but I mailed them on Friday, so I'm hoping they come today, or I would say Wednesday at the late. I mean Tuesday at the latest. So I'm just kind of started this here, and then I'm just gently peeling. So as I said, remember, we do have a couple spots that we're going to have to touch up. So as you can see here in between the legs, when I wasn't doing my best job of trimming, because I didn't want you guys to have to wait. I probably could have done a better job. So when you do this, make sure you do just a little bit better of trimming. But once you do it one time, you can save these and definitely use them over again. I've used that one with the rhino. I think everybody in class used the one with the rhino, and I think that day I had like 8 people. So, okay, so before I start anything else, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of touching up. So I'm going to get the Balmy Blue and the Seaside Spray. But instead of doing these with a marker, which I have done before, it makes the lines almost a little too harsh. I'm going to do it with a blender pen. So I'm just going to squeeze my ink. And you're following. Oh, well, goodness, that's good. I'm glad it came that fast. That makes me happy. So I'm going to just pick up a little bit of ink, and I'm going to kind of follow in right around the edges of their heads. Now, you might have to do this with more than one ink, but I'm starting with my lightest first. And this is also one other reason that I highly suggest when you do your masking, you want to make sure that you cut to the edge of the black line, because you will get much better masking if you have almost the color is overlapping. So just kind of keep that in mind, because you'll think, is this too close? You're honestly better off being a little bit too close, because then you won't have to do as much touch-up work. A little bit here. I don't know if you can. I know some of you have the Brother Scan and Cut. You might even be able to stamp this with your Scan and Cut and then print it on masking paper. And then it'll cut it out for you. That'd be even easier. I don't have one of those, though. I just have scissors. Okay, so there's the lighter. Just a little bit up here. So I'm going to wipe that off. I'm going to do the same with the Balmy Blue. Because I'm trying to color in right around their head, but without getting onto their actual head. And quite honestly, filling this in, most people aren't going to notice this. You're going to notice it because you know you did it, but really these little fill-in pieces aren't that difficult. Okay, and I'm going to do just a teeny bit of the blueberry bushel around a couple of the heads, just because they're a little bit too light. Especially up here with the dark. His head is kind of in a darker spot. And I know I did this in layers, and you're probably thinking, why didn't you just do the blueberry bushel from the start? Because sometimes when you do the dark one from the start, it's almost too dark. So that's why I kind of start with the light. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. I don't feel like I missed any spots. Okay, so now all we can do is, I don't really know much about meerkats. I'm assuming they are like a light brown of some sort. So I'm going to take a guess at that. I have my ivory and my bronze out because I think they really do a great job. I also have out light and dark crumb cake. I feel like we have soft suede. Yeah, soft suede is going to be nice as well. So I'm going to try with some lighter images, and then we'll go from there. I'm going to do, I think, light crumb cake first. And again, I'm just going to kind of keep it light around their face. Going to kind of keep it similar. So light on the face, maybe a little bit light on the belly. And I know when I'm doing these blends right now, typically you kind of want to stick to one area, but since these are just shades of brown, I feel okay with doing it. And then I'm going to move to the light soft suede. So I'm going to go ahead and get my pointy tip out of my dark soft suede, and I'm just kind of keeping the lid on. Pointy tip of the dark crumb cake, and then the light brush tip of the soft suede. So now I'm going to just come in on the side. Same with this. I'm going to just take my light crumb cake and kind of blend it in a little bit. Makes it really nice. If I need to, I'll add some of the other dark ones. And you certainly can also use your crumb cake and your soft suede interchangeably. They're not really, I wouldn't say they're like super specific to one or the other. We'll do the tail a little bit darker. So same thing again. Let me get with my dark, kind of coming around on the sides, kind of trying to keep the shading to one side. And then just bringing the light in again. You can always add more dark, but quite honestly, I find it very difficult to remove it. So make sure you take your time. And the other thing you can do too is you can even add layers of light and then add another layer of light. And believe it or not, it will make a darker shade. So it does make it pretty simple to do. Go up here for you. And then come back and do the same. So I'm just light crumb cake. And I believe this is light soft suede. So you don't really have to stay in the same specific exact color. But you do want to stay in the same family of color. Just adding a little bit extra to this little dude. Kind of trying to be, I'm going to make this little person over here a little bit lighter. More light than anything. So this one I'm actually going to add a little bit of the ivory. And then go back over again with a little bit of the light crumb cake. And it kind of gives them a little bit different of a look. All right, let me close these all up. I'm going to go in. I have a little bit of my dark crumb cake here just to maybe hit a couple of these little accent spots, which kind of help you figure out where your shading should be. So you can always kind of use these little lines. This one has a little bit of a blue smudge, so I'm kind of covering it up with a teeny bit And this had a blue smudge right here, so I just added a little bit of tan instead. So it still looks pretty cute. I am going to, only because the teeth are white, I'm going to add just a teeny bit of the light pool party because they kind of brighten up the whiteness a little bit. And let me see, right over here, I have just a teeny, I see a teeny smidge. I'm actually going to do this with this. Teeny smidge here. This, I'm just kind of filling in a little bit of pool party blend here with the bullet tip. Kind of add a little extra shading. But you don't have to just use one thing. You can use whatever you like. But I think it looks pretty cute. So, pretty cute considering. Now, I may have measured this incorrectly, so I might have to trim it down just a little teeny smidge. Let me just see. I think it might be over just a little bit. Have Blog Hub coming up on Thursday. Let's see, what is that? 5 1/4. No, that's actually pretty good. This is 4. Oh, wow, that's pretty nice. Okay, so I'm gonna layer this onto something. I almost want to trim this down just a smidge. I think I'm gonna end up trimming it. So I'm gonna have to, because I did do this ahead of time. So I'm gonna take a little bit off the bottom and a little bit off the top to get to 3 3/4. Just so I don't cut anybody's head off. And then I'm going to take a little bit off at each side to get to 5. That way they're still kind of centered, because I think I'm going to layer this on 2 things. All right, so there we go. So there's that. Okay, and I'm going to do, I feel like the black base looks really nice for this, especially if we do a nice piece that makes it pop. So let me see. I'll score this at, it's going to be right. 4 1/4. Yep, and then I'm going to cut it at 5 1/2. So then we're going to mount this here, but I want to put something underneath, and I'm actually going to sponge the edges of that since I already worked on that card. I think white would look nice, or a nice piece of balmy blue might even look really nice. Let's just kind of hold up and see what we think. I think I'm going to go with balmy blue. Whoops. Sticking my cardstock down on something that's open and wet. That's never a good idea. So I'm going to trim this down to 4 by 5 1/4. And then our other piece, we end up cutting it down to be 3 3/4 by 5. The only other thing we have to do is add our sentiment. But what I'm going to do, what did I do with all my sponges? I'm trying to find one of the ones that's a little bit dirtier, but no such luck. So I'm just going to take the blueberry bushel and just going to sponge. Just really easily, just to get rid of that white edge again. You could do this with your marker too. This is mostly just if you definitely don't know what size you want to use. Who's saying mint macaron? Donna's going to turn this channel off if you keep saying that. Although it would look nice. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to layer this. There's my, whoops, almost knocked something over. Bone folder. And we have to add our sentiment. So again, I was thinking of Australia when I did this. So we could do "We're Here from You" from all of us. That'll be really nice. Or you could even add to the inside, "Hope things get better soon." Which, excuse me. I think the only thing they're going to need is a massive amount of rain, and hopefully not all at the same time that it causes flooding. But I'm going to add "We're Here for You." And yes, I believe I finally have caught the Rainbow Stampers' new cold, so yay me. And I'm going to just do this one a little scrap. Blueberry bushel will be nice. If you wanted to, the other thing I've seen a lot of people do is, oops, that's a little too, is to do a sunset in the background, which would be very pretty. So I'm just going to give this a second to dry. And then trim this out with my little trimmer. So you can earn this trimmer right now if you join Celebration. Donna, did you use your trimmer yet? Have you used it? Donna just recently signed up to be part of my team. So I have to tell us all how your trimmer is there. I'm going to cut this down just a little bit. It's a little too much. Donna's probably like, haven't used it yet. I should have sent her a couple packs of mint macaron, right? All right, we're going to do We're Here For You. And I'm going to just take one more thing. My Seaside Spray. You guys know how much I like tracing around the edge of stuff to make it stand out. You could cut out a die and back it with a die as well. So I think that'll be nice, just like that. I know there are lots of people collecting crafts, I shouldn't say crafts, cards to send to Australia. Actually, a friend of mine is. And I am going to do the inside of this too. But you could also use this, punch out you could punch out like a die or a shape from this and add to the inside. If you're trying to save yourself a layer of paper. I think I've told you guys before, I'm always marveling at the fact of people covering up full sheets, and here I am doing it. I'm guessing that sometimes you just have the fact that you don't want people to have to wait. That's how I feel, so I don't want to die cut from something. But if I was here by myself, just crafting on my own time, you bet your buns I would. Looking for a bigger dimensional. So I'm going to put 2 dimensionals here. And then I'm going to put one, I'm going to put something on the inside and then we'll be done. Just going to finish up the inside. Really nice card. Nice card. Okay, so I want one sheet for the inside. I'm going to just do a Whisper White panel. 4 by 5 1/4. Just like so. And sticking, where are they? With my, oh my goodness gracious. Lost them already? Gotta be here somewhere. Or there. Stick with the meerkats. I'm going to add the little cactus on the inside. Just going to put it on the side. And then add a sentiment. I am going to stamp this again in Memento and just give it a moment to dry. And I'll color this in with the blends. Hopefully that's somewhat centered. And hope things get better soon. I'm going to go with Balmy Blue, just to kind of keep the cohesion and color with the front. All right. Granny Apple Green, and I think I wanted Old Olive. Old Olive and is this Calypso Coral? Yep, Calypso Coral. And I probably need, oh, I have my brown here. So I'm going to just do the brown first, since it's not as close to the image. Just going to, oh, that was dark. I thought that was light. Go with light first. Light and dark crumb cake. And I'm going to just take this and fade it out a little bit more. Okay, and go with light Granny Apple Green. A little bit of light old olive, kind of more at the base. This is dark granny apple green. Gonna just kind of follow the lines of the cactus. Can kind of go outside a little bit because it'll give it that softer, fuzzy feeling. So you don't feel like you really have to stay 100% inside. Add a little bit more of the dark. This is the dark old olive just to the bottom. And then coral. Make sure those are capped. I did leave the cap off of one of mine one time. Definitely don't want to do that. And then we have the dark calypso coral. And I'm going to go back again with the light just for the top. There you go. Oh, glad I checked that one because that lid wasn't on. This is again the light old olive, just to give it a little bit of depth. So, did quite a lot today. A little bit of blending, a little bit of masking. And I will do a video in the near future and I will use the masking fluid instead. That way, in case that seems like something that you might like to do. There you go. Very simple. Really pretty. Hope you guys like this card. But I will do something with this. So this is called drawing gum. Drawing gum, masking fluid. This I got, I feel like I got this on Amazon. But again, you definitely need a brush for this, but you don't want to use like your best, not your breast either, but your best, newest brush. You want to use a brush that's older. Now, you do want one that has a nice tip to it. That way you can get a good coverage, especially if you're going into like little teeny spaces like this. However, this is really easy to use. It probably would last you forever and a day. You just put it in a little cup. You do need a teeny bit of dish soap, again, to put onto your brush. It kind of protects it, makes it a little easier to clean. Or, again, other thing you could use is masking paper. So it is a paper that has a release paper on it, in case you missed the beginning. So it's like a sticker. It's removable. It's repositionable. You can use it over again. So it will last you a really long time. If you'd like to buy any of these supplies and more, you can go to my online store, which is rachthestamper.stampinup.net. If you're watching this after I have done this recently, the video comments, they will be on here, and you might think, who is she talking to? So that's just the way lives work. The comments, unfortunately, on YouTube disappear. Now, before I disappear, I'm going to just go back and make sure there's no questions. And this I just did onto, Kathy, you asked in the beginning, this is just Whisper White cardstock. And then I stamped them onto the masking paper. Late from Florida. Thanks for joining, Stacy. Thank you all for coming. Is it Coralie? Thank you, Coralie. Nice to see you. Thank you for sharing. This block that I used to color on was just a stamping block. And then the other one, if this one was what you're asking, this is from Neat and Tangled. It's a clear, I think it's called like a rectangle backdrop stamp set. So this is a clear stamp. This is obviously just the case for it, but it's rectangle, and you can use either side to stamp onto. However, you could use a photopolymer stamp. You could just use the back side of it as well if we have one that's large enough. And you don't need the rubber part underneath. However, you do need it when you use the photopolymer. Hi, Francine. And the meerkats are a light sandy brown. Okay, so I didn't get too dark. Darker stripes. Luckily, I don't have the back of them. Maybe the next time we'll do the other one. And they live in the southern tip of Africa. Thanks, Kathy. Didn't know that. Next time I will try and do the one where we do the masking, because that is really, really, really fun. I want to see if I can pull out one more photopolymer before I disappear. Give me 1 second. Let me see. It's probably not big enough. Cling. Okay, so for example, Now, granted, this isn't huge. However, if you were to stamp, say if you were going to stamp the cactus and you wanted to have a reflection of the cactus or even a mirror image, you could use the back of, this is the lily stamp. I haven't even used this as a regular stamp yet, but it's a good enough size. So this part is the part that you'd stamp with. And you guys know that you can stamp with the other side, get a different image, but you could also use this as your mirror image because it's very flat and smooth. However, it's not going to be big enough for the meerkats necessarily, but you want to make sure something is big enough for your stamped image. So you could use the other side of this for some of the smaller ones, but just to kind of give you an example of what I'm talking about, you're just going to use the back of a photopolymer stamp that is large enough. And as a matter of fact, even if you wanted to, you could add a little bit of the water scenes with this, with the lily pad, if you wanted to add something to the reflection part. But I'm going to do one with the drawing gum another time. So that's a goal I have for this week. So I'll do something and mask it, and then we'll make another card. And then I will also do one with the silhouette so I can show you guys that technique just in case you haven't seen it, because it was really neat. And basically you do need black embossing powder to be able to do it because you're going to completely fill the image in, but that was really cool as well. So thank you guys very much for stopping today. I hope I've answered all of your questions on there. I hope you guys have a great day. And yeah, absolutely, don't go out and buy a stamp. I just had, when I wanted to do this, I know some people, you could certainly try using the silicone mat, but I don't feel like it gives you enough of a crisp image around the edges. So I don't really love it. It's okay, but I prefer to use either this or I've used the back of a stamp before. And as a matter of fact, the one stamp that I used that was the biggest was the house stamp. Let's see if that's handy. I must have put it away. Oh, here it is. This stamp is a great stamp because it's big. So if you happen to have this stamp, you could do the meerkats on here. You do want to make sure that you clean it off, so make sure it's nice. Oops. Make sure it's nice and clean. But this is a really large stamp, so you could definitely do the meerkats with this if you have it. Just use the back side of it. This is the one that I used to use, but once they discontinued this stamp set, that's probably why I forgot. And then what you could do is, if you have, you could even use the little floppy piece of acetate. It doesn't have to be stiff when you put it underneath, or if you have some junk acetate laying around that's a little thicker, you could use that as well. But this size stamp is great for using, so that's something else that you can use. So I thank you guys very much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day. If I don't see you tomorrow, I will definitely see you on Wednesday on Facebook at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're saying some prayers and hoping for some major, slow, drizzly rain for all of you in Australia. Our hearts are with you, thinking of you all the time. Thank you guys very much for watching. Again, if you're catching on this on the replay and the comments don't make sense, it's just because they disappear. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell, and it will notify you when I go live so you can catch me next time I'm live on YouTube. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.